But if I don't win, then I'm going to look how to get to the top of that casino so I can jump off. But let's just say almost a year's salary that I won. I ended up owing someone a large amount of money. I get to put in the back of a car, machete held to my throat. These guys who obviously kidnapped me are heavily involved in drugs, so you must be a drug dealer. At the time, I just didn't feel like my family would be protected if these guys went to prison. I was scared. And as I looked over that shoulder, I just felt a big bang on my head. And the next minute, a taxi driver was dragging me by the feet in the back of the car and saying, "You've been hit over the head with an hammer."
Mark, I'm really grateful you could get on here with me today. Welcome to Addictive Recovery.
Cheers, Daniel. It's a pleasure. I'm delighted we've been able to make it work. I know we're in different time zones, but I'm really looking forward to chatting to you and sharing a little bit more about my story.
Right back at you, mate. Right back at you. Drawing from his personal experiences with addiction and recovery, Mark Murray has become a passionate advocate for mental health, dedicating his life to helping others overcome similar struggles. Mark is the co-founder of Whysup, a UK-based organisation dedicated to raising awareness about mental health and addiction issues. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you like to do in your spare time.
So I'm from Bolton, definitely worse weather than where you are, although you just told me it's raining where you are. So from Bolton, been brought up in Bolton, lived in a few different places due to addiction, running away from the problem.
So where did your gambling start off?
Yeah, my gambling started at the age of 16. At first I'm putting my dad's bets on, and I remember he's putting £50 a horse on every horse, live racing all day, which is quite a lot of money. So when he's losing, I'm not really seeing the impact of that, but when he's winning, he's sending me to collect the winnings from the bookies, and I had to say, "Oh, I'm Mark's son," and even that, I felt like I was in some like VIP club that they knew my dad, and I'm going, it's Mark's son, and they're giving me this money, and then I would get back and he would count the money out and give me some. So I'm thinking, well, my pockets are filling up here, and then eventually I had a go, and I lost some that day, but the wins, God, they lit me up like a Christmas tree, because I'm winning money, going back to my dad, and he's patting me on the back and saying, "Mark's had another winner." He's shouting it across the pub, and I'm just like, this is brilliant. Like, and what it also gave me that day was complete escapism from this situation I've been going through. When I gambled that day, I wasn't thinking about changing nappies. I wasn't embarrassed about this situation I was going through. I felt like gambling came at the perfect time, and it was the perfect medicine. We know it's not, it's a sticking plaster that often causes a lot more damage. But for me that day, I thought it helped. So what did I do? Started meeting my dad more and more regular. And if you imagine addiction as a spectrum of a habit, a problem, addiction, and some people can have a habit for 20 years, something happens in their life or something gets out of balance, it can turn problematic, and they end up with addiction. It can take 20 years, that spectrum. I'd say it took me 3 months. Within 3 months, I was showing signs of addiction. I was chasing my losses. I was lying to people that I was loved. It was making me feel terrible, but I was always going back. And that is a big sign of addiction. Something is causing severe damage in your life, and you're still going back, causing more harm. But there was a story before that. I think it's important that I always touch on that. I was brought up off just my mum, single mum. My mum and dad split up when I was about 3-4 years old. I have very little memories of my father, really, but I felt happy, I felt loved, and I felt safe, even though I was just being brought up off my mum. Quite challenging for my mum. She was a student nurse, so she didn't have much money. My dad didn't provide any support to her emotionally or financially. He just literally up sticks and moved to London, and I didn't hear from him for the next sort of 12 years. But I had a real good family. I was close to my aunties and uncles, and I was close to my mum. No brothers or sisters, so there's just me and my mum in the household, so it very much felt like me and my mum against the world, if I'm totally honest. My mum was stood on every sideline when I was playing football. She was at every parents' evening on her own, and I sort of had a bit of a dysfunctional relationship because I was very dependent on my mum, and I would often think as a child, if something happened to my mum, what would happen to me? Because I've no dad, I've no brothers or sisters. Where would I go? And I'd have this constant battle in my head of like, I'm worried, to be honest, that I was going to lose my mum one day. I explained that my mum was a student nurse. My mum is trained now to be a family planning nurse. So my mum came in schools doing talks on family planning. Like if she come in my school, I was like embarrassed and thinking, "Oh my God, my mum's in giving condoms out in my school. This is tragic." Which is a sense of irony of what happened next, because I'm leaving year 10 going into year 11, and I go to a family planning centre with my girlfriend who'd missed a period, and basically didn't even know what that meant. And this doctor turns around to me and says, the test is positive. And I'm like, sat there, and I said to the doctor, what does positive mean? And he said, you're going to be a dad. And I'm sat there in my blazer with my girlfriend in her school uniform, looking at each other, just going, what does that even mean? Like, what's happening? We walked outside that day. We didn't get any sort of, you need to go and speak to this person. It was like, bye, and waved us off. And we sat outside in this family planning centre, and I'm just looking at the sky. I remember it being a sunny day, and I'm thinking, how am I going to go home and tell my mum this? And very childlike in my thinking. She's going to go mad. I might not be able to play football at weekend, and like I was going to get grounded in somewhere when, I've had that news later in life, and it's this monumental thing that everyone's happy about, and you can't wait to tell. Well, as a 15-year-old, it's not that. It's like you're really scared. So I went home. My mum answered the door. How's your day been at school? Are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And for the next 2 weeks, I didn't tell her. Eventually, I told her. My mum was fantastic, to be honest. I remember her saying, you've not killed anyone. We'll get through it as a family, and we'll face it together. And I thought, God, she's handled that quite well. It's quite a surprise. And then I went upstairs to tell my girlfriend that my mum was okay about it. And I heard this crying from downstairs, and it was my mum crying. And I've gone down again, just very childlike in my thinking, and said, I thought you was okay about it. And she just said, I just want what's best for you. I didn't know at that moment that my life was going to change forever. I didn't know I was going to have to grow up very quickly. And I didn't grow up. I was still a boy having to face this situation that most men struggle with. And I'm talking about me as well. It was terribly difficult as well, for Callum's mum. That's his name, and it's difficult for us both. Perfect storm. Around this time, my phone rings one day, and it's my dad. And it's my dad saying, I'm back from London. I'd love to get to know you and form a relationship with you. And I'll be honest with you, one of the ways that I formed a relationship behind my mum's back, because I was terribly guilty in communicating with my dad because he's not supported my mum, so I'm not telling my mum, was meet him in a pub, buys me a pint of beer at 11 o'clock in the morning, gives me £20 and said, that's your gambling money for today. And I had a job at the time washing pots and raking leaves for £5 a week. So that was 4 weeks' money for me. And I'm thinking, I'm keeping that money. That'll go to some nice trainers or whatever it might be. But I don't know what it is. I speak to a lot of gambling addicts. They have that positive experience at the start, or they have a win that ignites something in them. And if you go in with 100 quid and you're back and forth and up and down all day, and then the bookmakers, which is where I was gambling, you finally win some back and you're walking out with 70 quid. You've been in there stressed out your head all day and you've got 70 quid. You're thinking, I've had a decent touch here, because you're 30 quid down and you've gone grey like in the last few hours. It was complete insanity. I was never going to have an healthy relationship with gambling from that point. And alongside this, I was hitting milestones. So from 16, I did well at my GCSEs, better than expected. And my mum said, well, I'll pay for you to, I'll pay your expenses as such, and your cost of living, even though I was still at home, give you a bit of spending money if you stay on and do your A-levels, because I think you can do well. But I'd had a child. So after 6 months, I'm like, I'm not really providing for my child here, so I need to go and get an apprenticeship. So I got an apprenticeship as an apprentice electrician. I turned up for work every single day on time, and I worked really hard. And that was a common theme. I had a good work ethic. I got along with my colleagues at work. But what I was also doing is with forming a strong relationship with gambling. And it wasn't just my dad's money now, it was my money. And I would get my wage every Friday, and without fail, it would be gone in a matter of minutes. And I was paid weekly then. And that losing your wage on a Friday and then having to get to the following Friday, the knock-on effect with that was going home and telling my mum week on week, I've no rent. Speaking to my child's mum and saying, I can't give you any money. So cracks are starting to appear in these relationships. My mum is saying automatically, there's something going on. Are you taking drugs? Well, I wasn't. It was gambling, but gambling wasn't really spoke about like at this time. And then it'd be my child's mum, we broke up, but I was still in contact and seeing my son hated me, like, because I just was constantly lying. Now, one thing I want to make clear is I wasn't lying with the intention of, I'm not going to give you that money. I wholeheartedly believe when that money came in my hand every Friday, I would pay for my rent, I would buy my train ticket, and then I would lose the money and I'd feel just guilt and shame. And then at this point, I'm thinking, I might just kill myself. And I'm 18, I'm 17, 18 at this point. And you turn into a young adult at this point, and I'm already doing something that's causing so much harm to me that I'm thinking I need to kill myself. And don't get me wrong, gambling wasn't the sole thing. You've heard what was going on. I was a young dad. That was tough. But the thing that I was escaping from was the thing that was bringing me to my knees, to be honest. One time, I'm the butty boy. Apprentices always get sent on the building sites for the bacon butties in the morning. I'm working on a building site in Manchester. There's 30, 40 builders that I had to go around, take the bacon and egg order and all this. And at the time, I'm in quite a lot of debt. And people are ringing my phone and saying, where's that money? And debt with some nasty people. It wasn't just family members at this time. And I've got this money in my hand for all these bacon butties. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I can go to the bookmakers before I get these butties, and I can turn this money into more money. And I lost the full lot. And I remember the last dog that I was watching, I got on my hands and knees and I'm going, please, please, because I knew I'd have to go back and tell them. I lost the money. I then rang my friend up who was on the other side of Manchester and said, mate, please, I've gambled the bacon butty money. And he was crying, laughing on the phone. And I was like crying the opposite, going, and he's going, you've done what? He was crying, laughing. That is like a story that people talk about now. He tells everyone when I rang him up the day when I gambled the bacon butty money. But the shame and guilt and embarrassment that I felt. And this same lad, at the time, I would get the train with him in the morning. And I went to primary and secondary school with him. He'd been one of my mates. And I'd hide in the toilet. And he's crying, laughing at me. And ticket man would be banging on the toilet. And then when I got to Manchester Oxford Road, the ticket man would be on and I didn't have a ticket. So I'd scale the wall. And my mate, he's not in addiction. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, I just completely changed. But I then, anyway, I end up going back to the building site and saying, I've not got your butties. And they're all going, you've gambled it. Where's the money? Where's their sandwiches? And they're just looking at me in complete disbelief. Some of them angry. Some of them never spoke to me again. But I'm trying to do a job, and it was coming into the workplace at this point. Cut a long story short, I've been loaning money off some quite bad people, and this group of people that I owed money to, I loaned £1,000 off them, and I was paying £200 a week interest on the money. And the difference is I didn't know these people. They were from out of town, and basically I got this money to say it was for something else. It was for gambling. I thought if I got £1,000 here, I think I lost that money in a matter of minutes. And then every Friday I'd get my wage, and after giving him, after 3 weeks, I'm like, I'm not giving him a wage every week. So I just made an excuse up, put the phone down, and little did I know when they used to meet me at this cash machine, I used to walk on the other side of town, and I just remember a feeling of something behind me. There was no warning, no explanation for the thinking behind it. I just got knocked out, completely knocked out. I looked over that shoulder, and as I looked over that shoulder, I just felt a big bang on my head. And the next minute, a taxi driver was dragging me by the feet in the back of the car and saying, you've been hit over the head with an hammer. and I'm just completely out of it. Gets to hospital, coming round in hospital, I'm thinking, what the hell? I'm in a lot of pain. My mum's shouting at my dad, and my mum was blaming my dad at this point. And this is the first time around this time my mum said, please tell me the truth. What is going on? I think you've got a gambling problem. Your granddad, who gambles all the time, sees you in the bookies. You're asking him for money. You've never got any money. You've got a gambling problem. I said, I've got a bit of a one, but my problem is I had 2 children at this point. So we talk about making your life hard. And I'm blaming it all on that. Like, I'm only gambling because I need money for that, which was not true. I would have gambled on 2 cockroaches running up the wall at this point. But my mum said, well, I'll pay these people off on one condition: you go and get some help and support. So I'm 21, and I just nods, yeah, great. Recovered from this head injury. Like, where do I have to go? Found this place, Gamblers Anonymous in Bolton. You're going to go to a meeting. So as a 21-year-old, after I recovered from this head injury, I walked in my first meeting. And I remember looking round, being very nervous, thinking, what the hell am I doing here? Very male dominated then, but that same meeting that I go to now has got probably 20%, 30% women. But then it was all men. So again, I'm trying to go to Gamblers Anonymous for an honesty program. I go to one meeting and tell my mum that I'm going back every week, and 3-4 weeks later, my mum walks in a pub, and I'm in a pub when I'm meant to be at a meeting. She's just crying her eyes out. I started hating the person I become. I worked on Sefton Water Centre, which was being built, Crosby and Marina, and I was on there for 2 years, had my own office, or literally from ground up. And by the end of that job being built, I had people coming looking for me on the site. So I'd have the labourer knocking on the door and go, there's guys looking for you on the site, people who I owed money to. I was just embarrassed. This guy who was training me up, who I really got on with, he's like, Matt, what is going on? I'd have no money for my lunch every day. I would pray that someone offered to buy a sandwich because I was starving all day. Or if someone bought some biscuits in, like, do you want one of these? I'd be like, yes, please. That was my lunch because I never had any money. And it was just miserable. It was miserable. Every win that I ever had was never big enough. I was a liar. I was hurting people that I love, not intentionally, but it seemed like that. People were saying to me, why are you doing this? I owed every Tom, Dick and Harry money. And at the end of that job, someone's coming looking for me because I owed them a big chunk of money. And it was nothing that my family could pay off or had that sort of money to pay off. After 12 months, I owed the guy who I was renting off $3,000 from I was playing cards. I don't even know how to play cards. I was in these card games that were like, not illegal card games, but these card schools that were like in a bar, and because it was such a tiny little island, it was like a big thing and I'd get paid in and I'd start playing these games, and they'd be looking at me going, you don't know even how to play this, do you? And I'm going, no. And they're like, get him out of this game. But I was just thinking, I might end up winning some money. And the big thing is, I wanted to win enough money to pay these guys off so I could go back home. And my dad's flat was over a bookies, literally just like over the top. So I walked in my dad's flat, and he writes his betting slip and goes, we're going out for a pint, go and put my bets on, I'm going to have a shower. I went, Dad, I'm going to try and stop. He said, if you stay in here, like, thingy, you could see we're like upset because I'd not put his bet on. And I could hear the TVs coming through his floor, like all the horse racing. I'm like, Jesus, this is the worst place. Best part about being here was some of my family was here. My dad's brother and his son, Aaron. Aaron was 21 at the time. He just passed his PE degree. He was working with my dad for a little bit of extra money in the holidays. We had a great time for the first few weeks of being there. Hit the Temple Bar. It's famous for its music and its pubs, Dublin. It was good. And then Aaron started having an argument with his girlfriend and said he was going back home and sorting it out, but he's going to be back. And he ended up going home, and then shortly after, I remember seeing a photograph of him on a night out. And I've been texting a little bit, have you sorted out? And I think he was back and forth with messages. But on this photograph, which was put on Facebook, Aaron was on the photograph and tagged in it. So it made me look. But then he was in the background and he sort of had his head against a wall. He just didn't look right on the photograph. So I didn't think too much of that. I just thought he was drunk. And then the morning after, He'd wrote sorry as his Facebook status. My cousins wrote sorry, just thought he'd done something stupid. And then my auntie rang me up and just said, Aaron's just killed himself. And I'm like, the first thing I thought, it's a mistake, he's on Facebook. And I went on Facebook and the green, when everyone was in chat, the green light was on, or the little green tab. And I'm like, he's on Facebook. And they said he's not. And it would have still it happened that quick. And what happened is he were back and forth with text messages to his girlfriend. And she said she didn't want to get back with him. And there'd been some communication between them. The inquest said he went on Facebook and misread something. We don't know the ins and outs of that, or I don't know the ins and outs of that. And then, yeah, he went downstairs and, you know, about half an hour before, he'd asked his mum to get him something from Asda for his lunch. So maybe in that moment he wasn't thinking about doing it. He was clearly feeling low, but he went to the garage and he hung himself, and my auntie and uncle found him. You never get over that as a family, in particular his mum, dad and sister, who are the closest people to him. But as a wider family, we were just all in shock. I had to go home. And how does an addict deal with something like that? I just gambled more. I drank more, I started taking cocaine. I was a complete and utter just wreckhead of anything that I could escape with. If I was drinking, I'd want to black out. And if I was gambling, I'd either want to win $1 million or just, it was just constant. And my adrenaline was just up, down. And aside to that, I'd then lose my money and walk outside from the bookies and think, oh my God, it's got worse. And it just kept getting worse. Looking back, I was completely lost, but I could never go home. If I went out the third pint, every plan that I had would go out the window. And then before you know it, if I was taking cocaine alongside it, it'd be 3 days. But then still trying to go back into functioning a job and just completely a mess. And no wonder I was feeling like I wanted to take my own life, because I was doing everything in my life that just wasn't looking after myself.
Adrenaline and the dopamine, just you're up here, and on that night out you're up here. And when the night out has eventually got to finish and come back down, you just don't want it to. You're just delaying the inevitable as long as possible. And yeah, you want to be the last one there. You don't want to go home. You don't want to come back to reality and come back down to earth. Completely relating to that. Just let me catch up with you there. There's a couple of things that I was nodding along to earlier. The relief of losing money. You used the example of going in with £100. You're in there for 10 hours, 12 hours. You leave, you're down to your last few pound, and you end up leaving with 70, and it feels like a success. You've worked for 10 hours, 12 hours, and you've actually lost £30. But our addicted brains would be happy with that outcome because we've come back from the brink. And I know a lot of my gambling stories were like that, where the high of that was better than the actual high of winning. Like, I've almost fucked it. I've almost lost everything, and last chance I had, I've come back from the dead. And yeah, I was nodding along to that so much. And then another thing you said, you spoke about giving or wanting to give the money to the mother of your first child, but gambling the money and not being able to. But it was never your intention to not give that money. You were convinced you were gonna win. Mate, I cannot get this point across enough. The exact same. At no point ever did I think I was going to lose. Despite losing for the previous 20 years, I was still convinced that next one, this is going to be the one when it all turns around. This is going to be that one when I finally get to the million and I can buy the dream world of the compulsive gambler that you spoke about. I can buy that holiday home for my mum in Australia. She can come and visit whenever she wants. This next bet will be the one where it all turns around. That addiction in my head telling me this, that I didn't realize at the time was the addiction, speaks to me in my own voice. And I can't tell that it's not me, it's the addiction talking to me. But yeah, I never ever hear anybody else say that except myself. Just how convinced you are that you are not going to lose, despite the previous form of losing every single time. The next time I'm going to win, I'm not going to lose. It baffles me. And then I think I am going to have to get you on for a part 2 as well. I definitely want to make a full video about the bacon butty money. Just the title alone is tickling me. I shouldn't laugh, mate. I know it's a painful memory, but
I forgot one. I went to Vegas and my family said, if you go, we're not speaking to you again. And one of my mates paid for me and he said, I'll give you your spending money. And to be honest, I were in and out of doing daft things as well. And I'll do this for money, I'll do that for money. And when I got there, he didn't give me any spending money. He was buying me drinks. So I said to one of my other mates, I'm not doing this all holiday. Just can you give me some money? So he gave me $200. And I went on this, I just sneaked off and thought, great, I'm going to go and gamble. Mate, I'm not going to go into it, but let's just say almost a year's salary that I won. And I go back to the room and I've got all this money and I put it in the safe. And I was like, I have cleaned the casino out. Next minute, my mates go to sleep. There's four of us in this room, so there's three other lads in there. So I goes to the safe, gets $3,000 out, boom, goes back on this same game and start doing it. Next minute, my runs to the room were going a bit quicker. I'm quite chilled off me. I lost my first bet. I'm walking back. It's fine. I've still got all that money in that safe. Go back. I go back. I go back. The woman on this game that they're not meant to do, she's like, please go to bed, sir. I'm not meant to say this. Please go to bed. You've done your bit now. Just go to bed. I'm like, no. I'm almost arguing with her, like saying, you're not telling me when I'm going home. Before I know it, I've done my money. And I thought, oh my God. I'd even rung my girlfriend at the time and asked her what present she wanted when I'd won. Like I said, I would basically say to her, you said when I come here that I'm going to wipe on money. Well, actually, I've won this. You can have anything you want. And she put an order in with me, what she wanted. I rang her back 12 hours later asking for pay for my flights. But what I'd also done is I'd gone back and spent every single penny of my mate's spending money. So they wake up in the morning and come to this game in the MGM Grand called Casino War. And they looked at me and they went, what time did you get up? And I thought, get up? I've not even been in bed. I've been playing this all night when you've been asleep. They thought I'd got up in the morning and they'd not even gone in the safe and seen it were empty. They went, do you want to come for some brekkie? I went, no. I had $10 left. Bearing in mind, I have just absolutely wiped a hell of a lot of money out. And I walked over to the casino facing the MGM Grand. And my thinking were, I'm going to go and put it on number 26 and it's going to come in and I'm going to get out of this all. I'm still thinking, I am not going to get beat here. I've got $10 left. But if I don't win, then I'm going to look how to get to the top of that casino so I can jump off. I'm like 23 years old at this point, and I'm thinking, I look back at that lad and just think, oh, like what is going on? I lose this money, and then the dread sets in. Then I'm looking at this casino and thinking, I'm jumping off. I'd sent my mum a few worrying text messages then at this point, and she rings me. What's going on? I told her, she said, get to that airport now. But I had to go back to the room. When I got back to the room, my mates had chucked all my clothes out on the landing and I knocked on. And one of them were crying, one of them were angry, and the other one, who was the gambling addict like me, was laughing under the pillow. So I had three different reactions. I said, and I was just going, I'm so sorry. And they're like, you've done it now. You've done it. I was devastated. I was gutted, because then it just went round everyone. They ran back home. He gambled all our spending money. Everyone just turned on me. Like, I was just so ashamed. And then my mum and dad booked this flight on a credit card. I sneaked off with my stuff and went to the airport, and this money had not cleared in time on this flight, and they were going, it's still pending and you can't get on. So I had to go back to the room and say to my other mate, whose money I'd not spent, can you let me in the room? He's like, they don't want to stay with you. We're going to have to get another room. And funnily enough, I'm waiting till the cleaners came round, and they always had custard creams. And I'd be like, can I have loads of them? I didn't even have enough money for food. I stayed there. I was eating custard creams for 3 days. And I was in bits over it. And then everyone's just thinking, you horrible person. And I hated that. I hated people thinking that's the person I was. Because actually, I would still I'd open a door for someone, I'd cross someone over the road. If any of my mates said, I need something, I'd get up in the middle of the night and doing it for them. I still had that element of loyalty and trust. I wanted people to trust me, but when it came to gambling and money, no. But it was always the intention. I'm thinking, I'm going to win, I'm going to put that money back. And then some of them had money in elastic bands. I'm thinking, how with that money tied and how can I put it back? Because I come back and still owe people money. And this is where my gambling just got completely dark, where I became a con man in this next 2 years of robbing Peter to pay Paul, making elaborate lies up, getting large amounts of money off people. My bets were getting bigger, my debts were getting bigger, my mental health was just completely deteriorated. And I had this thought process that I either win the money or I take my own life. Like, that was the thing. And then it was horrendous. And I was trying to go into work and like turning up at hotels when I'm working away and pretending my card's not working. I've done this since I was 16, just blagging everyone all the time. And there were victims along the way. You know, it weren't all like people being a bit dodgy and thinking they're giving me this money in return. It were like, there were innocent people in this. You know, it got so bad in the end that I ended up owing someone a large amount of money. I get put in the back of a car, machete held to my throat, rings my mum up, gets my phone off me and said, we've got your son and he's not coming back until you pay this money. And my mum just drops the phone at work. They ring my dad who's in the pub. He just put the phone down, like not too interested in what was going on because he was sort of sick of it. But my mum was really feeling it. And that night, thankfully, I ended up I escaped and ran off from these lads at this car. Basically, the car broke down and they were putting me in a van, and I ended up running off when I was getting in this van and escaping. And the police response were coming back down and they put me on the floor, realised I was the victim, and then took me to a house with two guys from the CID and said, what job do you do? Now, I always said I was a QS. I was a trainee QS. I'd actually gone into like sales in construction, selling green roofs. I didn't know nothing about green roofs, but I was selling them. And here I am in my late 20s in this situation in a police station with these guys, these two. It wasn't even a police station at this time. It was a terraced house. It took me some house, and the CID gets on these chairs, and they were like a double act. And they said, so tell us what you're involved in. And I said, gambling. And they're like, what? These guys who obviously kidnapped me are heavily involved in drugs, so you must be a drug dealer. I said, I'm not, I'm a gambling addict. What job do you do? I'm a QS. And they're looking at each other, they're almost like double act. Your mate's a QS. How much do you own? He can pull that out of his back pocket. And I said, well, your mate's not a gambling addict then. Because I've got no money. I'm in debt. I'm telling you the truth. I owe them. Then they took me to the station in Bolton and they wanted me to give a statement against these guys. And I said, I'm not willing to do that. And if anyone's watching this is not me giving advice to someone if they're in this situation. I'm not against the police. At the time, I just didn't feel like my family would be protected if these guys went to prison. I was scared, and that was the reason why I did it. So I didn't give the statement, but it was a Friday when it happened. And I said to they got me in with the main sergeant, and he sort of made me a cup of tea, and he said, come on, Mark, sign this piece of paper. And I said, no. I said, are you arresting me? And he said, no, we're not arresting you. You're the victim. I said, I've got to go to Gamblers Anonymous tonight. And he went, you going where? And I said, I'm trying to stop gambling. In the end, I lost my house. I lost my family. I wasn't allowed to see my kids. My mum had a nervous breakdown. I ended up sleeping in Bolton Hospital toilet and thinking, there's no way back. The only thing I had was I did still believe I was a good person and I had a glimmer of hope, but I couldn't see a clear path. And I was always thinking, you always want to think of the end goal. I want to be out of debt and I want to be a good person. But to do that, there was so much navigating. I ended up writing it all down when I finally got some help. What was that help? I reached out to a rehab. They said there's a 4-week wait. And I said, I was on my mate's couch. Then I got in touch with my mate. I said, I really want to go to rehab. And he said, come to mine and sleep on my couch. And I ended up reaching out and they said, you can come in 2 weeks. But I was still waiting. I was still going to get a payday in between. So on the Friday before I went to rehab, I goes in the bookies And I thought there was this one person that I owed a big chunk to. And I thought to myself, even if I'm going to rehab, I need to pay this person off. I don't want to hurt this person. It's killing me inside. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but this one person, I just thought they are going to be so distraught if this money's not coming back. And I started gambling, and I'd lost for about 2 years. I kept looking and thinking, are you being serious? I just lost and lost and lost and lost. Friday before I goes to rehab, I couldn't stop winning. And it's going up and up and up and up and up. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And I almost got to the figure that I owed this guy. And then I start writing crazy bets on virtual horse racing. And this guy who's watching me on the roulette, he's putting them on for me. And I'm writing it. And I put two of the same bet on this. I even forgot I'd already put the bet on. And I'm going, go and put this on. And it's the first time in 13 years, and bearing in mind it's the last time I ever gambled, the manager come over to me, she said, Mark, that bet that you've put on, they've taken it, but we can't take that, love. It's too much. Like, you'd clean us out, and we shouldn't have put that through. I said, but it's all right, me putting all my money in, but you won't let me put big bets on, win my money back. And she said, can I just ask that? She said, are you insane? And I said, yeah, I am, leave me alone. Just leave me. And I just then went like this, pressed this roulette button like this, and watched this figure go ping, 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 ping. And for whatever reason, to get in rehab, because I was still employed, I had to pay a service charge of £200 a week. If you're on benefits, you would get it funded, but I was still classed as employed. And I got to 400, and I just went, collect. But I never collected money. I was either winning, or well, very rarely winning, or I was cleaning myself out. But whatever went on that day, I walked out and thought, this is it now. I'm going. And I got to my mates. I said, take me to rehab, like, get me down there. I want to go down now. Like, and my mate said, well, if you go down now and they don't let you in, we'll get you an hotel the night before. And that's what happened. I got an hotel. Turns up as a 29-year-old, and that was the turning point. That was the turning point of everything. I learned a lot about myself. I was around the power of lived experience. I was with other people that were just doing the same things as me. And you sit there, and there's this, I shared an house with this Asian lad, and he sat there very quiet. And he's like, I'm like, what job do you do, mate? He's like, I'm bank manager. And I'm like, and he's like, I'm waiting to go to court. I'm like, why? What's happened? He's like, I've spent £250,000 at bank's money and transferring it all to my finger, and I'm going to jail. And he's just the nicest lad. But I sat there and I didn't run away, and I worked hard, and I took it serious, and stayed in there for 12 weeks. Start having symptoms of an illness in there. Actually, I had them for 2 years. So when I'm in the bookies gambling, I'm going to the toilet and I'm passing blood. But because I'd slowed down in a rehab, I'm going, what's this illness that I've got? Because I've not got that escapism anymore. I need to go to doctors and get it tested. And I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which I'm so glad I got diagnosed in rehab, because if I would have had that illness, I don't think I would have needed medication at some point, or I would have needed surgery. And if I'd not got it at that time, I wouldn't have been here. So recovery is much more than stopping a substance or behaviour. It enables you to live, to cope, to have good connections. And my friendship group went so much smaller. I sort of looked at people, I didn't blame anyone for my addiction, but I just thought, they're not good for me. Cut. I had that sort of ruthless streak of, right, I've got to really take this serious. I gave it 100%. I took it serious. Almost people would have thought too serious at some time, because if someone was messing about in the rehab, I'm like, this has got to work for me. You're not ruining my time in here. Because people sometimes would come in and just not be taking it serious, which probably some people thought I was like that at GA. But at that time, I'm like, this has got to work. And it did work. It just gave me a toolkit that I could take into the rest of my life. And I'll be honest, leaving rehab after 12 weeks, and then I did 6 months in a halfway house, I honestly felt I had no phone on me. I'd not gambled. So I'm thinking, I can take on the world here. I was 12 weeks in, 14 weeks off a bet, because you do a 2-week assessment period. but I did feel like I could take on the world. Realistically, I was like Bambi on ice. I had a lot of learning to do. I'd been in a safe, closed environment. I had to go and feel things. I had to keep walking past bookies. But I remember my mum got in touch with me. I'd not spoken to my mum for some time at this point. She got in touch with me. I remember bursting into tears and this relief. And my mum got in touch and said, I wanna catch up. And I went home that first weekend and someone had been knocking on my mum's door for money. So when I arrived in Bolton, she was screaming at me. And I'd had this relationship with my mum. She used to get really angry and upset. And that's the minute I knew I'd changed, because I just said, Mum, I don't want this life anymore. I love you and I'm so sorry for hurting you. And I don't feel like I'm safe being around this when you're shouting at me, and I've got to go back. And she said, no, you're going to see your grandma. I said, I'm not, I don't feel safe. And I went back, spoke to my therapist at Rehab, and I thought, I've changed. And then I got a job. I left the halfway house after 6 months, got a job volunteering at the rehab for 2 years, and I loved it. And I got a flat, stayed in the Midlands, and used to come home every week and start rebuilding my relationship. But I didn't come home to a welcome home party. My family refused to speak to me. So at my mum's 50th, I stood at the bottom of the garden and my family are walking past me and blanking me. And in my head, I'm thinking, I've just done rehab and you're not speaking to me. I've done my bit now, but they'd not done rehab. They were still grieving and upset because of the turmoil that I caused my family. And then my friends start struggling. I bumped into him at a wedding when I come back, and I'm sat on this table and I'm sober, I'm driving, and I've got my suit on. And I just enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed watching my mate get wed, and the do after, just talking to people and not being drunk. And then you're seeing everyone who's wrecked and thinking, wow, this were me. And one of the lads on the table, he's got a recruitment company, 500 people, he's got his Rolex on, and he's blah, blah, blah. He's buying everyone drinks and bottles of champagne. And he sat next to me and went, what's the latest story with you then? Tell me one of your mad adventures that you've been on. I said, I'm in rehab now. And he just burst out laughing. Rehab? What do you mean rehab? I went, I've been rehab, I've just done an halfway house, and then I've moved in Midlands, but I'm volunteering at the rehab. He went, what? I went, you might need one day. 6 weeks later, I get a phone call, and it's him crying. I'm struggling. I need help. And then his missus rang me up and said, he's coming living with you. I'm like, what? Like, he's got this massive house. I can't have his behaviours around me anymore. He's like, what's he going to do? Sleep on couch? And she said, no, he's getting a blow up bed and he's staying on your floor. And I get a phone call, and can you speak at Parliament for the rehab that you went to, because you're volunteering, you're 2 years clean, you're a success story. I said, yeah, can I bring anyone? Because I'd started building bridges with my mum. And they said, yeah. I said, can I bring my mum? So I wrote an apology letter to my mum, went to Parliament. First time I ever did public speaking, stands up in Parliament, sees faces and famous faces, and I just told a story of addiction, read it out, shaking like a leaf, and then thought, and then I'm talking about this company that I've set up that's not ever even delivered a service. So I gets off stage and everyone went, tell me about Whysup. And I'm like, yeah, like, I'm thinking, I've not even got a frigging business. We've just got a leaflet and an idea. And that idea was, let's go and raise some awareness through lived experience. We didn't know what a business was in this space. We didn't know where it was going to take us. That's where Whysup was born 8 years ago. And yeah, it's just been a mad journey since.
Mark, just before we go into Whysup, I've just got a couple of questions for you on things you've discussed. How were you getting all of this money? When you were gambling, you were owing a lot of people a lot of money. Like, I know it wasn't establishments that you were getting it from, so it wasn't a credit rating, but surely the people you were getting it from were seeing that you weren't paying it back. How were you able to continue this web of lies that you had spinning?
Yeah, and it lasted for 13 years, that behaviour. It was smaller amounts in the early days, but I just made elaborate stories up. Like, if I found a way of getting money, I would make bigger stories up. I remember being offered 2 Man United tickets and I couldn't go. I was a Bolton fan anyways. But I then put some on Facebook, and then I get all these messages, and then I'm thinking, I nearly sold the bloody ground out. I nearly had 2 tickets of people sending me money. So I was always getting in really stupid situations from being young. But then because I got a good job and I was seen as progressing, people just trusted me. But I was always reinventing myself. So if I owed money over here, I wouldn't be doing that in the same area. I was just going to all different people and I was making lies up. And in the end, I was even sending emails to myself like that they were off certain people and these people were investing this money in this and they were just, oh, I never had one thing to sell. I sold iPads, Man United tickets, door handles. I did not have one thing to sell. It was just all lies. And sometimes, the odd occasion, I remember one guy giving me some money for something, and I went back with more than he gave me and said, I can't get hold of that, but you've obviously given me this money. That's for messing you about. And he was going, you have got, like, there were air conditioning units. Like, and he said, what have you done with them air conditioning units? And I said, like, you've got your money back. And he's like, no, you've bought them air conditioning units and you've sold them. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've actually paid you back and you're shouting at me. And he couldn't get his head round. And I just said, I gambled your money and I've won it. And he was stood there and he's like, you what? And I'm like, I've gambled and I've won and you've got more back. That doesn't always happen. And he was just looking at me like, you're crazy. So I was just making crazy lies up. I'm going to bed at night with just the world like on my shoulders, but always having hope. I had this vision that I was going to win it all back, and finally one day have that big win and go back round and pay them all back and give them extra on top for messing them about. And it did not work like that.
On that same day in the Bookmakers, the woman saying to you, Mark, are you insane? And then you shortly afterwards, for the first ever time, cutting your losses and taking the £400 out. Do you feel she had some sort of input on you making that decision? And if not, what switch flicked in your head to make you take that money out? And by the sounds of it, that was your turning point. What changed to make you make that decision?
Yeah. The woman probably didn't, but the woman, I remembered that. I remembered how it made me feel. Not maybe at the time, because I was, your guard's up when someone comes over and says that to you. But I've never forgot that moment of her saying that, and she was trying to help in some way. But no, I just think I'd had enough. It wasn't a hammer over my head. It wasn't losing my family. It wasn't being kidnapped. It wasn't running off to different countries. It was just waking up every day and thinking, I can't get through this day. I'm like, I actually slept like a baby when I was gambling, because people say, like, were there any happy moments? And I say, yeah, when I was asleep. Like, asleep for me would be switching off from the hell that I was living. I've done 12 years now, and luckily, well, not say luckily, I've worked hard. I've not had a relapse. And I'm not saying, you learn from relapse and stuff, but that feeling that I had, that just horrible feeling at the end of it, I bottled that up, and it was like, it was a reminder, just you can't ever go back here. And thankfully I've not.
Right. This next question's a two-parter, and it hits very close to home for myself. Similar to yourself, my mum got put through 20 years, your years were different, but through 20 years of hell through my gambling addiction. And now she's my biggest fan, and she tells me every week how proud she is of me. I speak to her regularly, and I love my mum unconditionally. The trouble that I put her through, I try and repay that to her now in staying in touch and giving her video calls with her granddaughters who are half the world away. The first question is, that first ever Gamblers Anonymous meeting when you told your mum you were going to start doing something, and then she caught you in the pub 4 weeks later. What did you tell her in that moment? And then second part of the question, now, how many years down the line into your recovery, what's your relationship like with your mum now?
Yeah, good, brilliant question. What did I tell her that day in the pub? Can't remember, but I would have just give some pack of lies that I'm all right and I'm not gambling now. I put it behind me. And my mum worked in substance misuse at this point, so she worked with addicts. But when it was your own son watching it, she was just angry at me and upset. And I just remember her always looking at me like she didn't trust me, and I was always telling a pack of lies. But where's the relationship now? After 3 years being in recovery, I spoke at Parliament. My mum comes. Again, I'm thinking, this is the turning point. She didn't speak to me all the way home. And I'm like, and she just said, I'm sorry, I just need some time because I've just relived everything and I need some. And I'm like, Mum, like, I'm better now. But my mum went on a grieving process with everything and the trust. God, I've got goosebumps on this bit. Where I'm at with my mum today, we speak every day on the phone. She trusts me. She's proud of me. Out somewhere and someone comes over in the supermarket and says, "You're Whysup, Mum. Like, you must be so proud." And she's like, "My God, I feel like all these people are coming over to me." It used to be people coming over and saying, "Your son owes me money." And now she's got this feeling of like, but it's not just the nice and shiny things. She trusts me. I'm calm when I'm around her. We don't explode and have an argument. And I've also learned a lot about my mum. My mum is a very bright woman. She's got several degrees, but she's always been all over the place, always losing things. But I just got blamed for everything. So my mum was like, "It's you because of your gambling." But then I didn't gamble for some time and I realised my mum were the same. And I started looking and thinking, actually, not everything's my fault. So a few years ago, 3 years ago, my mum gets diagnosed with ADHD and she rang me crying and saying she feels stupid. And I wanted to set some fireworks off because I'm like, brilliant. This is, and don't get me wrong, I put her through hell. I'm not saying it wasn't straight, but it just made me come to thinking everyone's got their own things going on. And sometimes as an addict, you're easy to blame for everything, but it's not. Some people have got their own stuff going on. What that diagnosis made me do is then look at, I'm always been in therapy over the last few years and always working on myself and learning about myself. And I get diagnosed with ADHD. And it made so much sense with addiction, dopamine and stuff. And I didn't want it as a label or anything like that. I just wanted to better understand myself. And it's made me look at things. But we just get on now. She's a great grandma. Not great grandma. She's a fantastic grandma. Breaking out. Don't be. Yeah, she's
exclusive on addicted recovery.
No. She's great. She's great. Like I just love my mum to bits, and yeah. But where I'm at with my mum, absolutely brilliant, and I'm so grateful. I cherish every minute of every day with her now.
Time is precious. The time that you've got with your loved ones. If you're waiting to make amends, if you're waiting to talk to somebody about your addiction, there's never going to be the perfect time to do it. Do it now while you still can, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So please use this as a wake-up call to get yourself into action and tell that person, share what's going on. If at worst, get in the comments below and speak to somebody from the addicted recovery community. A brilliant segue there. Whysup. Tell me more about Whysup now. It's 8 years, you said it's been going?
Yeah, 8 years. It's a lived experience organisation that delivers education programmes in a number of different settings. We do a lot in schools. It's more prevention, but we're dealing with addiction in schools. Phones, vaping, social media. We always say a big sign of addiction is when something is taken away and you become agitated, discontent, and feel like you can't live without it. You take most phones or computer games off young people, they're already showing signs of addiction. So we do that through lived experience education. So someone standing up and sharing some of their own experience alongside some education. Because we're not a charity, we're a limited company, so we're for profit, but we do a lot of good. And people who come and look at my business always say, "Why are you in schools? You spend more of your time there for the least amount of money." And I always say, well, if we're doing prevention and awareness, you can't just go where the money is and leave a full generation of kids out. We'll always be in schools. We're kicking off in prisons. We work in treatment centres, which is more not prevention. I love that work because I can really relate to those people in treatment who are rebuilding their life. I still do a lot of speaking. I'm trying to free myself up from that a little bit because it is emotionally taxing, telling that story over and over again. And Whysup also, we're big on addiction, we're big on mental health, but ultimately it's about relating. Everyone can relate to going through a tough time, the back's against the wall and feeling like it's never going to end. Whether it's a relationship breakup, whether it's addiction, whether it's being in a pressured job that you absolutely hate. And I think recovery is about connection, rebuilding, being around good people. You can get complacent, confident, and think, do you know what, life's great now? And then 18 months ago, my son's got colitis, gets put in hospital with it, literally on death's door, nearly lost his life, heart nearly stopped, lost 4 stone, had a mini stroke of some sort, all his face dropped. And I remember being at the end of the bed, fighting his corner, because the NHS under a lot of pressure and weights and all that. And I was sat there thinking, I'm so glad I've got my recovery, because I would have never have been there if I would have been gambling. And even if I would have been there, I wouldn't have really been in the room. My mind would have been elsewhere. But I stayed, I fought his corner. And them moments I'm thinking, I'm a good dad. My son can rely on me. I've got my family's back.
Stopping gambling doesn't take away all your problems. It does not fix your life overnight. But I word it as it helps you deal with life on life's terms. It's a saying from Gamblers Anonymous, and that's exactly what you were able to do with Callum there. You were able to be present, you were able to be in the room, you were able to be in his corner. And then that dad now, that family man now that's getting that Father's Day card, I'm just picturing the Mark who was at the back of the garden for your mum's 50th, as opposed to the guy I see in front of me today. And it's just, the transformation's amazing. In fact, I feel like you've already answered this, but if money was no object and you could have any job in the world, what would it be and why? I knew it was going to say that.
Yeah.
I should have asked you 15 minutes ago.
I've never been asked that question, and I got goosebumps answering it, because I've never thought of it like that. But yeah, I'm doing it. I feel so lucky, not in an egotistical way. I'm quite still self-doubt. My probably misses more than anyone knows this. I'm nervous when I stand up. I listen to myself back and think, I don't like my voice, or I don't like the way I look, or so I'm not walking around 10 feet tall still. But God, them conversations what you have with people, or giving someone your time and helping someone, and it's rewarding, and helping people when no one's watching, not for social media, not just because it's you're finally living in line with your values and what's important to you. And there's lots of things that I'll do on a daily, weekly basis that no one ever finds out about. I'm just trying to do the right thing. And I feel connected in some way that, yeah, I just feel it's the dream job.
Thank you so much for sharing your story here today, sharing your struggles, taking us on the journey of your gambling, your recovery, and all the amazing, fantastic work that Whysup is doing. I've loved having this conversation with you today, and I've loved seeing you grow from the person you were, like I say, stood at the back at your mum's 50th to the person that's in front of me today, just off hearing your story.
No, thanks for having me on, and much appreciated. I'd love to do something with you again, and who knows, if we're over in Australia, mate, we'll connect and do something together.
Definitely. We've got to do that, the Bacon Butty Money episode. So when you're over here, I'm going to pencil you in.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, mate.
Guys, everyone, thank you so much for being here with us today. If you've got the bandwidth for another story, if you're familiar with baseball and the Shohei Ohtani scandal, the sports betting scandal, please click this video on the screen now, and I will see you over there.
I love that. I love connecting with others in recovery, because even that, that common ground where we think we can relate to that, and you're going about, I could feel in your voice how much you loved your mum, and I'm like, I connected with you on that, because you know what we put our mums through.